Hey everybody, we're in the Red Rock Racing Sportsbook. It's the calm before the storm. I'm Chucky, this is Jason. It's Hoops Madness time. I know everybody was waiting for this time of year. We're excited about it, but before we dive in, that was just a little teaser. We're going to dive into some football and baseball, Jay, which has been really exciting so far. I mean, unbelievable. They kind of at the same time, all the free agent moves, the craziness of both leagues right now has really taken the sports media world by storm.
Yeah, we're missing out on the exhibition baseball, but this kind of free agent frenzy of all the guys signing, and obviously Tom Brady's unretirement and the quarterback movement throughout the NFL has been made an exciting week, and a lot of work to be done in baseball and NFL moves, despite the fact that we're sitting here on the verge of March Madness.
Right. I think when you look at the quarterbacks, you know, we know Brady came back, and that really altered the NFC. Last week we had Wilson and Wentz. You still have got the rumors out there with Deshaun Watson. There's 4 teams out there: Saints, Panthers, Falcons, and even the Browns. You know, could Baker Mayfield get moved? It's just been crazy with this. And you talk about the AFC West and how good those quarterbacks are. And breaking news, the Raiders went out and got a pass rusher today. They got Chandler Jones because they're going to be chasing around Herbert, Mahomes, and Russell Wilson. So I think it was a big pickup for the Raiders today.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of movement, having some fun with the props. We put up the Russell Wilson over-under passing touchdowns this year for the Broncos at 36.5, and with Brady coming back, kind of a big number. We put up a 41.5 on some going
and
back.
43 last year.
Going back and forth with Tom Brady's over-under touchdown passes. So it's not only what's going on, it's how it's affecting the wagering world and the odds that are out there. So again, we're trying to be on the forefront of when these signings are occurring and players are going from place to place, putting up some unique props for you to be able to wager on how their seasons are going to go.
I suspect we might do the same with Deshaun Watson once that happens. If some of these other quarterbacks are moved, we still don't know where Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go. If the Browns are out now on Baker Mayfield, ultimately who becomes their quarterback? There's still a lot of kind of dominoes to fall. If Deshaun Watson goes to the Falcons, our guess is that Matt Ryan gets moved, maybe to Indianapolis, who still needs a quarterback. So it really is a domino effect once that takes place.
Yeah, and I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to do the same thing on the baseball side of things and start putting up some Matt Olson homers for the Braves or Chapman homers for the Blue Jays.
Freddie Freeman, wherever he goes.
Suzuki for the Cubs, and Schwarber signing with the Phillies. So baseball's had a lot of really great signings, unique signings, and what those players are going to do in their new ballparks as well. So look for those props. Probably let us get through this weekend of March Madness, and then we'll start to hang some of those baseball props.
You know, I think the amazing thing about baseball is we did post. I think we were first to market with the win totals for all the teams in baseball. But all these moves have really altered those win totals. We've seen some dramatic moves, anywhere from 3, 5, 8 to 10 games based on some of the stuff that's going on right now. You look at the Reds, who have been in a total sell mode. The A's total sell mode. We've seen their win totals go down. The injury to Tatis for the Padres has really affected them, and I think depending on where Freddie Freeman lands, it's going to affect one of those teams' win totals as well.
Yeah, and the Mariners, another team that seem to be acquiring players and getting a bunch of pieces of the puzzle go up, and obviously the Red Sox, Phillies, and this Blue Jay team, and
really
the
good.
Rumors out there is they're not even done. I saw some stuff today with potentially them looking at Jose Ramirez from the Guardians, so they continue to look to stockpile that offensive talent in Toronto.
Yeah, there's still some big pitchers out there as well. So, I mean, it's been fun. I mean, it happened, in such a condensed version that we've been forced to really have our head on a swivel and move all these futures. We know the guests are looking at it. They're kind of guessing where some of these guys are going to go, and so many teams have been in on Freddie Freeman. We've heard him tied to the Dodgers, heard him tied even, to the Cubs, to the Blue Jays, to the Red Sox, to the Padres. Anybody's guess where he's going to go right now.
No, and he would make a big difference, whether he goes. I know the latest rumors are the Dodgers, and I know the Red Sox have kind of jumped in, and the Rays are still there, but that's definitely going to make a move in those over-under season wins once he signs a contract in one of those places.
I know some of those teams in the American League were in on Kyle Schwarber. He ends up signing with the Phils, so that kind of takes that out of the equation. Can you imagine Freeman, in Boston? With the Yankees, I think he's out of the equation there with signing Rizzo. But I think Boston, the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, Padres, they're all in on Freddie Freeman right now.
Yeah, and the other one is Chris Bryant. The latest rumors have been him going to the Rockies. But again, he was
Seattle too was
rumored to go to Seattle and Philadelphia. And again, does the Schwarber signing take Bryant out of, the potential of him to go to Philadelphia and partner up, obviously, with his Las Vegas buddy and Bryce Harper.
Right.
These are great things that are happening, and it's fun and exciting. And I'm ready to get back in there and start working on some baseball props as we speak.
And as you mentioned earlier, the Cubs, big international signing by signing Suzuki to that big deal. He's been just a monster. I mean, he hits rockets. The home runs he's hit, the Japanese league, and averaged, I think, over 35 home runs a year. He can steal bases, hit for power. He looks like he'll be slotted in right field for the Cubs. Kind of the first big spending spree the Cubs have gone on now in a couple of years.
Yeah, and we think that he's got great raw power. It's how does that raw power translate into Major League Baseball? We saw what Ohtani was able to do last year, but it also took him kind of 2-3 seasons to really get his game going in overseas, and so we'll see if it takes that long for Suzuki to translate. Obviously, facing Major League pitching a little bit different with more of the breaking stuff than you see in Japan.
Right. So we've kind of talked about a little bit now baseball and football. Real quick, we'll jump into basketball and hockey as well. First, looking at hockey in our own backyard. Knights have lost 5 straight right now. They're reeling. You've got Leonard on the injured reserve again. The trade deadline is next Monday, the 21st. If they have any wiggle room, or what do they do right now? But it's a Knights team that's not playing good hockey.
Yeah, and they're starting to set a new trend, and a trend that we're seeing across the league is just massive amount of goals being scored. And I think the Knights have now played 4 straight games where they've allowed 5 goals or more, so not good from the defensive standpoint.
I think it was a touchdown Jets yesterday.
We've been talking about their injury affecting the Knights, but really a trend around the National Hockey League with seeing some very, very high-scoring games. And again, we talked about some of the fun props that we've been adding to the NHL menu on, will there be fights in the games, total shots for players. So continue to check that NHL menu for the props that we're putting up each and every night.
And I think in pro basketball, you look right now, and this Nets team is starting to make some noise. We've had them as the lowest team in the East, even after the big trade where Harden goes to the Sixers with Embiid. You look at the way Kyrie Irving is playing right now, and this Nets team, once they get Simmons back, if they're healthy, they're awfully good.
Well, I'm ready to start putting up a prop on will anybody score 50 in tonight's NBA games, because
it happens every night.
It's been the new trend over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, LeBron with the back-to-back 50 and a 56, and then we saw Karl Anthony Towns put up 60, and then Kyrie Irving puts up 60 last night. So some excellent scoring on display in the league, and we'll see if we can come up with a prop here this weekend on maybe some NBA scoring as well.
Right, it's a great time really to have the app too, with all the college basketball tournament games that are going on. We still have up to that $500 bonus, but with all these props that we're adding on a daily basis, get the app. It just really brings the sportsbook to you. Even if you're in here kind of hanging out, watching all the tournament games, not only in the book, but in Rock's Lounge, Lucky Bar, even the bowling center, the whole property really will be college basketball central.
Well, and you talk about college basketball tournament props. The team, I think we need to get some oxygen masks back there on the amount of work that these guys have really been doing, putting up these props. We went through the Super Bowl props on offerings, and kind of when the NASCAR race was here, all the props that we had offered for the NASCAR race, and it is really a Super Bowl type menu of available props for this year's March Madness. Absolutely incredible. Races to 10, 20, and 30. So essentially the team to score the first 10 points, first 20 points, first 30 points for almost every game. Player props for every game. It's just
fun.
13 seeds versus 4 seeds, 12 seeds versus 5. Number of wins by the SEC, number of wins by the ACC, number of wins by the Mountain West. Will there be overtimes, head-to-head matchups on teams that aren't playing each other in different brackets? So the prop menu is absolutely extensive, and we're going to continue to push that menu all the way through the whole tournament. It's not just a Thursday, Friday of the opening week here. You're going to see those props go through the entire length of the tournament.
We were going to take a break before we got in the college hoops. As you can tell, we're too excited about it. Here's ticket counts too. So when you look at futures to cut down the nets in both the men's and women's. So the men's, number 1 highest ticket count, Kansas. Number 2, Arizona, both number 1 seeds. Number 3, a little bit of a surprise, and that's Tennessee. We know how well they played. They won their conference tournament. I thought they should have been a number 2 seed. They're a number 3 seed. 3rd highest ticket count, UCLA was a popular bet as far as liability on the futures all year long. And Iowa, who wins their conference tournament as well, they're number 5. The women, UNLV, the number 1 ticket count. Lady Rebels, followed by UConn. South Carolina, the number 1 overall seed. Stanford and Baylor. So it's kind of some interesting ticket counts so far going on for both the men's and women's to cut down the nets and win the tournament.
I think from a men's standpoint, when you talk about the popularity or the role that Tennessee and Iowa are on.
Right.
Obviously, 2 teams that win the SEC championship and win the Big Ten championship. So you talk about teams that are playing well, that aren't in that favored spectrum, that are more in the 10 teams down the chart that you're getting those 18 to 20 to 25 to 1 type prices on. And Tennessee and Iowa obviously fit that bill of teams that were able to go win their conference championship, playing hot, and can they stay hot and pull some upsets here.
I was really surprised, though. It almost seemed like the committee had already decided where they were going to slot those two teams, because they both won kind of convincingly their conference championships on Sunday. Yet Tennessee comes in at a 3. I thought they easily should have been a 2, and Iowa's a 5. I thought they should have been a 3. So some questionable calls, I thought, from the committee right there, just based on what we saw these teams do in conference play.
Well, and probably one of the most questionable calls by the committee isn't necessarily the seeds. It's about the teams that got in and the teams that were left out. And I think that the one, Buzz Williams and Texas A&M, obviously played in that SEC championship game against Tennessee, fell short, had a rough stretch in the middle of the season, played 500 ball in the SEC. But they're the one big miss for me that didn't get invited to the big dance. Sat there and lost the SEC championship game and failed to get a bid when we watched teams like potentially a Michigan or a Notre Dame, those type of teams that kind of snuck in. And Texas A&M actually beat Notre Dame head-to-head in November, and Notre Dame was able to find their way in. But obviously it proves that every single game that you're playing throughout the year is a must-win game when you get down to those teams that are going to be on the bubble come Selection Sunday.
I really thought Michigan would be one of the first out, and with them being slotted at a 9 spot, that wasn't even a consideration by the committee, and I did think A&M would have been in it as well.
Well, Michigan's actually at 11.
11, right.
And that's, to me, and I don't know if you want to jump right into games, but it's one of the most interesting games on the board, and strangely enough, it's the first game of the big dance. Obviously, forget about the play-in games on Tuesday and Wednesday, but Thursday, 9:15, we have Michigan taking on Colorado State. You talked about Michigan maybe not a deserving team to be in it, but they're one of these really unique situations in that they're an 11 seed playing a 6 seed. They're the favorite in the game over the 6 seed. That 6 seed happens to be Colorado State out of the Mountain West, but it's the first 9:15 game on Thursday morning, so it's essentially the most important game of the whole day for everybody to get started with a winner, get things underway. This is a really, really interesting game. You watch the Wyoming team lose to a Wyoming Mountain West team, lose to a Big Ten team in Indiana last night, committed a ton of turnovers, but the Big Ten was able to prevail in that matchup. Very, very similar matchup here in that Colorado State, where they sat in the Mountain West, similar to where Wyoming was, and Indiana very close to where Michigan was. So this is a very similar matchup in that case, and Big Ten was able to prevail last night. Great matchup here from a standpoint of Juwan Howard leading this team. This should be a slower pace game. Colorado State likes to play the half-court game, which may favor Michigan with that big 7'1" Hunter Dickinson. I think is going to be the key to this game if Michigan's able to offensive rebound and play the slower game. And obviously Juwan Howard's kind of missed those games at the end of the season from his suspension to be able to get these guys back. And the other big thing here is this game is in Indianapolis, so could be a Michigan-type crowd there in Indianapolis, which them obviously having a little bit closer to home than Colorado State having to travel all the way to Indy.
Well, the Big Ten's really had some struggles of late in the college basketball tournament. I look at them this year. I think they're going to make some runs. I think you look at Purdue, Wisconsin, Iowa. I think all three of those schools are really good. I think they're going to make some noise in all of their regions and have a chance to move on. If you look over our shoulders right now, it's a little bit quiet in here. That is not going to be the case Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's so many great games. Even look at Gonzaga, the overall number 1 seed in the tournament. A game opened up at 25. Early action was clearly on Georgia State. It's so much different than it was, say, 5 or 10 years ago, where there's so much parity now. We talked about it on previous segments where I think there was 5 or 6 number 1 seeds this year, about 50 schools that kind of rolled in to the top 20 this year. And you're not seeing those gigantic numbers like you've seen in the past because so many of these small schools have kids that have been there for 3 and 4 years, and a lot of these big blue blood schools, kids are one and done. So from a parity standpoint, it becomes a lot closer of a gap, and you see a lot of dog action, which it used to be all favorites. You see a lot of dog play right now in the tournament.
Yeah, when you talk about parity, one of the things that I look at and kind of jumps off the page to me is when we put the prices together and we're working on the odds, and you take call it a Providence, who earns a number 4 seed playing South Dakota State as a 13 seed, and Providence is only a 2-point favorite in that game. So we've got a 4 playing a 13, and it's a 2-point spread, and then we've got another 4 UCLA playing a 13 in Akron, and UCLA is a 14-point favorite. So those are the intriguing things to me. Arkansas, a number 4 seed playing a 13 seed Vermont, and they're a 5-point favorite. So when you see those type of discrepancies in a really high ranked seed in the tournament playing a team that is ranked very low, and it's a pick'em game or essentially less than a 5-point spread, tells you the incredible balance we have in college basketball today.
Right. I almost think if you like some of these teams that are under a 5-point favorite, money line becomes a value play on them because so many of these games are so close, and we're in such an information era right now. It's not only our podcast, but on all these network broadcasts, they talk about teams that are live, underdogs that are live, and the David against Goliath games, the Cinderella stories, really kind of transform the sportsbook then. If you're a $10 bettor or a $10,000 bettor, you could be sitting next to each other, and when it becomes evident that one of those big favorites isn't going to cover, the room just gets louder when they're rooting for that Cinderella story. Who will be that, that Commonwealth, that Loyola of Chicago this year that kind of emerges, gets to the Sweet 16, and potentially the Elite Eight that becomes the chatter that everybody has in the book?
Well, I hate to go. I know that you've talked about Iowa, and going back to the NIT games and the games that we watched last night, St. Bonaventure from the Atlantic 10 went to Colorado last night and beat essentially the number 4 team in the Pac-12 in Colorado. So NIT, they find out Saturday, Sunday where they're playing. On a Tuesday, they made the trip all the way there. And St. Bonaventure and the Atlantic 10 is consistently a conference that we've seen a lot of these, we'll call it Cinderella stories. We talk about a Virginia Commonwealth, George Mason, George Washington. The Atlantic 10 has had that Cinderella story as we look back through the history of the tournament. The 2 teams from the Atlantic 10 this year, Richmond, who won their Atlantic 10 tournament, the A-10 tournament, beating Davidson in the final, they take on Iowa. They're a 10.5-point underdog against Iowa in the opening round. And Davidson, who was the number 1 team in the conference all year long, they take on Michigan State in a close matchup there. So if you're potentially looking for one of those sleepers, just from a historical standpoint, one of the lower conferences that we have seen those Cinderella stories come out of, it's the Atlantic 10.
There's 3 dogs, too, that aren't really like household names that we've seen some play on. That's Colgate, Vermont, and South Dakota State. So that's what makes the tournament so fun. Again, I think there's so much that the gap has narrowed, and I think it becomes so much more competitive.
Colgate, just one fact on Colgate. Colgate is going up against Wisconsin, who's a number 3 seed. Obviously, we're co-champions of the Big Ten. To get this, to earn that number 3 seed, really struggled kind of their last couple games of the year. Lost to Nebraska with a chance to win the Big Ten tournament, Big Ten regular season title on their own. They end up splitting with Illinois, but lost to Nebraska, who was the bottom feeder in the Big Ten, and then they go and lose in the tournament as well. So haven't played their best basketball. To me, a little bit overseeded at the 3, but that's why Colgate might be getting some play, because if you can lose to Nebraska, you can surely lose to Colgate.
But again, there's so much information out there for some of these smaller schools that they do get play because those kids have been together for 2, 3, and 4 years. I think you mentioned Davidson earlier, and we'd be remiss if we didn't do a shout out to our buddy at Fox 5, Jason Feinberg. We've got the Feinberg props that are up. Dr. Feinberg props for his cat, and Davidson is one of those Wildcats. It's the 4 Wildcat teams who will have the most wins, and it's Arizona, Villanova, Kentucky, and Davidson, which I think is a really fun prop because you look at those top 3 schools, and all of them have a legitimate chance to cut down the nets.
Yeah, we like having some fun with him and his love for cats, but obviously the Wildcat prop. The thing that makes this interesting for me from a Wildcat standpoint, for them to win the tournament and advance the furthest, is that Arizona and Villanova are in that same South bracket. And very likely that one of those 2 teams is going to be a representative.
So wait a minute, we could have a cat fight?
We could have a cat fight. Now, again, I think that's the toughest bracket from a regional bracket in the tournament, that Arizona, Villanova, Tennessee, Illinois, Houston. To me, that is, if we'll term a World Cup soccer term, that's the bracket of death. I mean, you have the Pac-12 tournament champion, you have the Big East tournament champion, you have the SEC tournament champion, you have the Illinois, who's the Big Ten regular season champion, and you have Houston, who's a tournament champion. So that bracket to me is absolutely loaded, and it could be a really tough time finding your way out of that bracket.
Yeah, I think we kind of looked at the brackets as we kind of went through our regions, or looked at the regions we went through our brackets as well. I agree with you. I think the South and the East are probably the two toughest. East with Kentucky, Baylor, UCLA, Purdue, Texas, North Carolina, and St. Mary's and Virginia Tech. And I think the easiest road is out west, though, where Gonzaga, the number one overall seed for the second straight year, yet they're not backed in the 5 highest ticket counts. But Gonzaga, Duke, Texas Tech, Arkansas, and Connecticut. And then I would follow that in the Midwest with Kansas, Auburn, Iowa, Wisconsin, LSU, and Providence. But for me, again, I think South and East are the two toughest. West and Midwest, I think, have an easier road for those number one seeds to cut down the nets.
Yeah, and we had the pleasure of watching Gonzaga take on Duke when they played here in Las Vegas. And tough to say that Gonzaga has the easiest road when you do have that Duke Blue Devils on the number 2 line in that bracket, and then you have Texas Tech on the 3 line. I think the 4 Arkansas again is a beatable 4, and the Zags should advance. I think that Texas Tech Duke matchup could be intriguing, although I'm on record with saying I expected something magical out of the Mike Krzyzewski last dance here, but they've been kind of really a disappointment. That last home game, losing to Carolina, obviously losing in the ACC championship to Virginia Tech. So maybe everything's not right there, or they were just putting all their eggs in this basket, and we're going to see that Krzyzewski magic happen right here. But again, I think there is a danger lurking in that Michigan State-Davidson game. I think Davidson could be a team, if they can beat Michigan State with a tough matchup and a great coach in Izzo, that could be a troublesome for Duke.
And they happen to be a Wildcat, too.
And they happen to be a Wildcat. But going back to the toughness, again, the Zags bracket, very difficult. The Kansas, Auburn, I hate to say it, but I think Wisconsin is a soft 3. I think that the 4 in that bracket is Providence, is a soft 4. Iowa, I think, is underseeded.
I actually like Wisconsin more than you do.
Yep.
I think they're a team that can challenge Kansas. I think Kansas is good. They just haven't been the same Kansas team. Quietly, they're a number 1 seed. I think Wisconsin could give them a lot of trouble if they match up.
I'm really high on Kansas. The one thing I really like about Bill Self teams is they don't have to always play their best basketball to win. They can go pound you on the inside. They can shoot threes. The one thing about Big 12 teams, and you can look at the Big 12 conference across these brackets, you know that the teams in the Big 12 are going to play defense. They're going to come with a great defensive effort in every matchup, so they don't have to come out scoring and hitting 50% from three-point land to win. They're going to play grind-out games that are going to be down there at the end, and that's how they beat teams with great defense.
I mean, it's so much fun. I mean, we could talk for hours about this. We're going to be doing some quick hits over Thursday and Friday of what's kind of going on through the midway point of the game. Next week, we'll be able to update everybody on kind of who that Cinderella story is going into the Sweet 16 and what's kind of transpired in the contest in the tournament so far. But contest, last man standing. You still can get signed up until 5 p.m. on Thursday. It used to be 9 a.m. So if you can't get here, you can still sign up to 5 p.m. $25 entry fee. 4 entries for $100 gets you a 5th entry free. It's just like the tournament. You win, you move on. The format is you keep 100%. Whoever wins the tournament gets it all. If there's ties, it'll be aggregate. But it's a great contest to get in.
Yeah, one of the things that I was going to just say from a handicapping standpoint, and we look at the first round matchups of what's going on Thursday and Friday, and if you go look historically at college basketball or even look at just the records of teams this year, teams play at home. They play really well. Teams are lucky to play 500 on the road. And one of the things that we talk about with all of the March Madness games is that they occur on neutral sites. And when you go to neutral sites, that tends to even things up a little bit and things like that. But watch where these teams are playing. When you have a Wisconsin that's going to be playing their first game, potentially their first 2 games in Milwaukee. When you have a Providence team that's going to be playing in Buffalo. Don't just dismiss what region they got sent to. Take a look exactly where they're playing those games and their closeness, their vicinity to home, because that can have some big influence on college athletes when they're able to have
fans
8, 10, 15,000 of their fans travel to these regional matchups. That goes a long way in how they're able to make those runs.
Well, even though Duke, I mean, you're going to have such a large contingency of fans for them with Krzyzewski's last run, so it's a really good point to kind of hit on. Guys, it's so much fun for us. We're excited about Hoops Madness. I mean, you've got Last Man Standing, get signed up for the mobile app, a number of different opportunities to watch games, not only at our property, but all of our station casinos, Racing Sportsbooks, they've got different venues where they're showing the games, and the crowd's going to be nothing like this. So get here early, have fun, stay within your means, enjoy the contest, enjoy the tournament, because we're excited that it's the normal format where it's the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think the more traditional style really is going to see an uptick in crowds, atmosphere, hype, and handle as we go through the tournament.
I'm going to put you on the spot if you're closing things off here. I know we didn't talk about this before we jumped to do the podcast, but do you have a team to win it all? Do you like something?
I do. I mean, I've said it for the last 3 weeks, and it's Tennessee. I know we talked about them. I thought they should have been higher than a number 3. I thought they should have been a 2. Rick Barnes hasn't had a lot of success in the tournament in his career, especially at Texas. I think he's turned the page. They beat Kentucky 3 times this year. I'm going to go with the Tennessee Volunteers to cut down the nets.
I really, really want to go with a West Coast team. I really think the Zags and or Arizona are the best team in the tournament. One of the things that I was looking back on is since 1975, historic. Since 1975, only 4 West Coast teams have been able to win the championship. So it's really been a East Coast, Midwest dominated college basketball tournament. And I really have a tough time not picking Gonzaga and Arizona. But I'm going to go a little bit deeper. And I'm going to go to the Kansas Jayhawks. I think Rock Chalk Jayhawk. We talk about
they're number 1 seed.
A little bit of the softness of their bracket. I think that they get to the Final Four, and if something crazy can happen in that Tennessee bracket, where you picked, anything can happen in the national championship game. So I won't go to that favorite line, but I'll stay on the one line with the Kansas Jayhawks.
I mean, for me, I said it was Tennessee. I do like Wisconsin too, and that's against Kansas in that bracket. But just kind of going off the grid of not picking a number 1 or number 2 seed. But I think that's what makes the tournament so great, is that we're going to have some great storylines, some great games. The atmosphere is going to be cool. And guys, we can't wait to jump back on with you next week for another segment of Bookends.
Again, before we jump off, one other, because Thursday and Friday are about the Cinderella story.
Right.
It's, as much as we want to talk who's going to win the championship and the great team, it's, man, who's this small conference coming out of nowhere that we know is going to get to the Sweet 16, probably even maybe see a sleeper show up in the Elite 8. Who's your team out there that you say, man, I think they've got a chance to pull some upsets? Who's this year's Cinderella?
I've looked at so many different schools right now, and I marked it up a little bit. Let me find who's my big Cinderella story this year. I got to find my page. I'm going to say it's Murray State.
Murray State?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, they're in a really tough first round matchup with San Francisco. Basically a pick 'em, basically a pick 'em game, but a team I think they're 30-2 on the year.
With so good in their conference too. How about you?
I'm going to, strangely enough, I don't know. Well, they're an 11 seed.
Right.
So Iowa State, not necessarily a small conference team, still a bigger conference team, but I still think they qualify as a Cinderella story because they'd be coming out of the 11 hole. They have a matchup against LSU, which I think is a very difficult matchup. I think they're about a 6-point dog in that matchup with LSU, but I think LSU is going through some internal issues with no coach.
Right.
That there's a potential for an upset there. And then I'm picking on your Wisconsin Badgers because Iowa State, after they beat LSU, they would go into that Wisconsin Colgate winner, and I do think that Wisconsin is a vulnerable team that go there. So I'm going to take the Iowa State Cyclones to be my Cinderella story.
I'm going to give you one more school that I had marked up too, and this might be a year too soon, because I think next year they're going to be a team to look for in the future book odds, and that's Creighton. I think you look at the job that McCormick does there and how they played in the conference tournament. I think this Creighton team is coached really well. They're disciplined. I think there's some value there on them at 150-1 to win the tournament. So for me, if you're kind of going off the grid of the top 20 or top 25, I'm going to throw out there Creighton and Murray State.
Yeah, they played great down the stretch there too. They play San Diego State. Right. One of the things we're kind of looking at is where is the success going to come for the Mountain West? We talked about Wyoming struggling and losing last night to Indiana. Looking at getting 4 teams into the tournament. Can San Diego State, Colorado State, and Boise State all playing pretty close to pick-em games in that first round. Will the Mountain West have any success? And this is, again, one of those really tight games. I think San Diego State, 2.5 point favorite over Creighton.
One last thing, guys, before we wrap it up. Again, we know the sports books get packed. Here at Red Rock, we'll be showing the games in Rock's Lounge, so a lot of open seating in there, and a lot of our properties will be showing games in other venues besides the book. So come check it out, have some fun. Good luck during the tournament. Don't forget, get signed up for the app, sign up for Last Man Standing, winner take all, great contest. He's Jason, I'm Chucky. The atmosphere is going to be crazy. It's Hoops Madness time, guys. We're excited about it. We'll catch you later during the week.